welcome to a special episode of The Sailing Show. I'm Chris Stafford, and my guest is Lisa Blair, who became the first woman to sail solo around the Antarctica when she completed her 184-day journey on July 25th in Albany, Western Australia. She had attempted to break the record for the fastest solo, unassisted and non-stop trip, but her yacht, Climate Action Now, dismasted during the night of April 4th after 72 days at sea. And Lisa was forced to sail under jury rig to Cape Town, where she spent 2 months while the boat was being repaired. It was a tough mental challenge for the Queenslander, but after some moments of reflection, she was determined to finish. And I caught up with her after she had arrived back in Albany. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, congratulations on what you've just achieved. Have you got your breath back yet?
Not a chance. It's actually way busier on land than it has been at sea.
What inspired this trip? Why did you feel you wanted to be the first woman to sail around the Antarctica and one of the fastest as well? I mean, that was the goal. What inspired it all?
Yeah, look, I mean, the Southern Ocean is such a majestic, raw and beautiful place. I've always had a fascination with it, and I love Southern Ocean surfing. And the trip just fitted really well with the timing. The departure point was close and accessible, and I thought it was something that, whilst not many had done it and no female had done it, I found it an achievable trip, even though it was, quite risky and quite dangerous in a lot of people's minds. So a lot of those things sort of decided for me that was the trip that I'd really like to do.
Tell us about the boat that you sailed. Climate Action Now, obviously a sophisticated yacht to take on such a trip as that. How did you come about finding her?
I'd been searching for funding and a boat and everything for about 3 years before I even came across Funnelweb, which was the original name of Climate Action Now. And I had seen it a few years earlier because it was raced in the Melbourne to Osaka. And it's a bit like boat porn to me. I'd fallen in love with it instantly. And then when I was searching for a boat for Antarctica, it happened to be in Newcastle and I was in Sydney, so not very far from me. And it just popped up for sale at an affordable amount. And I flew up to Newcastle the next day, put a $1,000 deposit on it to secure it. And that was that. I had once all the surveys were done and I had a good look through the boat, I knew she was going to be strong enough for a trip like this. And then we spent 6 months refitting the boat and overhauling her completely, replacing everything pretty much, and heading off to go and do Antarctica.
Well, you're no stranger to those southern oceans, and of course down that part of the world you've done the Sydney to Hobart a couple of times. You're always up for these really tough challenges, but the Southern Ocean is something else, isn't it? We know from people like Dee Kafari and the other girls that have been here on the show. We've also heard the stories of how dangerous it is, as you mentioned. And you did come to grief. Now, that must have been a huge, huge disappointment, Lisa, to have the mast go. And, that would have thwarted your dream. I mean, how did you feel at the time? Was it just about survival, or were you mad as well?
Yeah, you're right. My whole world came crashing down in 3 seconds flat. And then it was survival because of the nature of the conditions at the time and how the boat was sitting in sort of 8-metre swell, and I still had the mast attached to the boat, and it sheared off at deck level. So it was an extremely dangerous situation when that occurred. And so my instinct was fight, save the boat, fight, save the boat. I was more than 1,000 nautical miles from the nearest land, and I was 48 degrees south in the Southern Ocean. So I was basically in no man's land in the world's roughest, coldest, most dangerous conditions you can get when I actually lost the mast. And so if I had have lost the boat at the same time, I probably would have lost my life. So it was a matter of survival to fight to clear the mast from the boat before it cut a hole in my yacht and sunk me, basically. So that's what was going through my head. It is just devastating that it occurred because I actually replaced all the rigging wire during the refit, and all that new rigging wire was 4 months old when it came down. So normally you get 10 years out of your rigging wire. So it was just a super unusual scenario. The wire fatigued through an electrical current running through it, and then unfortunately it gave way.
You managed to get to Cape Town, didn't you, under jury rig? How long did that take you? And was that in itself a scary trip to get to Secure Haven and get her fixed?
Yeah, so after the demasking, I had a hole on my port side. All my safety rails my starboard side. All my safety rails on my starboard side had been ripped off the boat. I had, delamination, and obviously I was exhausted and fatigued. I cut away the mast and left the boat for the night and went back to bed and tried to get out of all my wet clothing and trying to stop the shakes, basically, because I was mildly hypothermic after being exposed for so long and wet for so long. And then the following morning, I set about repairs. So I had all day just drifting in the swell, and the swell was still really large, but I had to patch the hole in the side of my boat because otherwise I wouldn't have probably made it back to port. So I used actually a dry bag, and I shoved a towel into the hole and then Sikaflexed the dry bag shut over the top and bolted it and screwed it down to the boat. So I ran repairs all day and then cleared the lines from from around the water and just checked that the motor was going to work and that my propeller was going to work, because it wasn't until the end of the following day that I even knew I had the ability to get myself back under engine. I then slowly started motoring north. When I issued the Pan MRCC Cape Town had diverted a container ship south to aid me. So I requested that they actually give me fuel. So we did a fuel transfer 2 days later in the middle of the ocean in about 6 meter swell, which then resulted in another collision. So I had now damage all extensively down the port side of my boat. And then it took me another 8 days to get north. So I built a jury rig using my boom and modified my sails and then motor sailed north to Cape Town. So, it was quite an ordeal. And obviously my emotions at the time are a lot out of skew because of everything that I'd just gone through, the traumatic experience. But, I was just really thankful to get to land. And I think for me, I already had the decision to continue by the time, like the next day, basically. And that sort of changed my attitudes. If I had have lost everything and not be able to finish the record, then I think I would have been in a lot sadder, a lot more depressed with the whole scenario. But given that I had that new focus already and I knew I could repair the boat in Cape Town and continue the voyage, that just gave me a new lease on life. And I knew at least, whilst this was a battle, I could keep going with my trip that I'd worked for years on, and that was such a big part of my life.
What was the cause of the breakage in the first place, Lisa?
We've had experts look at the micro photos that I've taken, the macro photos, but there is no real way to tell because the rest of the mast was at the bottom of the Southern Ocean. But the leading theory is that it was electrolysis. So I had a stray current up the mast that was trying to ground itself. So whilst it's an aluminium rig and stainless steel rigging wire, my carbon fibre shroud mounts do conduct electricity through the boat. The rest of the boat is standard fiberglass and balsa cord. So because I didn't lay the glass, I don't actually know how that carbon fibre for the shroud mount is spread throughout the rig, throughout the deck and the hull, and whether it connects through to my keel. So at some point there, that carbon fibre could connect through to my keel box, which then creates a full circuit effectively. What we saw in the break pattern was that there was 4 strands that had broken weeks and weeks earlier, and given the level of corrosion on the strands, there's a high chance it could have even broken on the passage up from Sydney. Like, we just don't know. There's 4 strands that are broken dead flat, and then the rest of the strands failed because of the load on them. They just pulled and snapped. So it was my D1 that snapped, my lower D1. But yeah, it's just a really unusual scenario to have 12 mil hammer wire give way like that after 4 months of its life. Like, it's almost unheard of. The rigging company had seen a similar case about 20 years ago, and it was down to electrolysis. And they had also gone to the National Association for Stainless Steel in Australia and sent them the images, and their thoughts as well were that the leading chance was that it was electrolysis.
So that gave you a bit of a break, obviously, but the frustration hopefully was past now when you're even more determined to get out there and finish the job, I'm sure. How did you tackle that then? What kind of renewed mental energy did you have and determination having had that happen to you?
Yeah, well, it was even harder because I had stuffed up on the insurance paperwork. So my rig, rather than being insured for $120,000, got insured for $20,000. So I had to then try and raise the capital to then buy a secondhand mask and put it all together. And so the time in Cape Town could have been less if I had full budget, but unfortunately, just never got that chance. So I never really got that rest because I was so busy fighting to try and raise the money and everything in Cape Town to pull it all together to restart the trip, that by the time I left, I was just so glad to be at sea again. In a trip like this where I'm so isolated and in the middle of nowhere, I generally get more rest at sea than I do on land when I'm preparing for departure. But once I did head off, I did think, obviously I was now sailing the Southern Ocean in winter, which again has its own additional challenges. And I thought that it was just going to be similar to what I'd experienced already, and I'd mosey on home and that would be that. But the storm systems coming through weren't necessarily more aggressive, but they were a whole lot more frequent. So I was getting buffeted by a storm after storm after storm, like every other day. And I just really struggled to get south back to that demasking point. So there was a time there where I very, very, very closely gave up. It sort of felt like the world telling me not to go. And I went through, obviously, a huge emotional roller coaster through that period of the trip. But once I was able to cross my track where I demasted at 4830 south of Cape Town, 1,000 miles south of Cape Town, I knew I was on the way home from there and I was finishing this trip. So, that was just a huge moment for me.
I imagine amazing relief when you got to Albany and quite the welcome that you got there too, from what I see. An enormous mental relief, psychological relief that you did complete it. But as a sailor, what was your biggest takeaway from that trip? Because that was quite an undertaking. What were your biggest lessons as a sailor?
Yeah, given that I planned this trip for 3.5 years, I think the level of preparation we put into the boat was very good. And due to the fact that we had procedures in place for emergencies, such as a demasking, allowed us to deal with that scenario a lot quicker and a lot easier than what maybe would have happened if I didn't have those procedures in place. And I think that's just vital to ocean sailing, and it's vital to a passage like what I was undertaking. We had submitted to all rescue services around the world whose oceans I was crossing my passage plan, my boat information, my medical information. We supplied them a package so that if an emergency occurred in their waterway, they would have full information to be able to react as quick as possible as well. And when I issued the PAN, again, I called my shore team and said, I'm issuing a PAN. And they then made the calls following our procedure to monitor and maintain that scenario. So I think for me, I was really happy that the level of preparation and effort did pay off. I've certainly learnt a lot more as a sailor. I don't think anyone's ever an expert at sea. You always have something more you can learn, and so I pushed myself and I learnt a whole lot new about the boat and fixing things like generators and engines and running repairs on the fly at sea where I've got holes in the deck of the boat and those sorts of things, like angle grinding my boom flat on the deck of my boat in the middle of the Southern Ocean. And, experiences like this, I think, just make you a better sailor, and that's what I love about it.
You mentioned there the beauty of the Antarctica and the Southern Ocean and, the high points of there must have been some really wow moments on the trip that went well for you, Lisa. What were those high points? Yeah,
look, I just love the lifestyle at sea in something like that eat, sleep, sail, everything's simple again. And I didn't get the news for 6 months. Like I was completely isolated. when I got back to dry land, I asked Mum if the PM's still the same person, because I didn't have a clue what was happening in the real world. And I think just being able to go up and do a sail change and have the albatross just flying by the boat, and they're curious, so they're checking you out, and you get to check them out. And there's nothing quite like that simplicity of the lifestyle that you live at sea. And, the sunsets and sunrises that I did catch were amazing. Obviously, I'm solo in very cold climates, so I was down below quite a lot. I'm sure there was a lot more wildlife than what I did see, but, I've got whales and dolphins and the odd sunfish. And, it's an adventure and a half, and being able to have those times where you just get to sit and enjoy the beauty of the view. And to be honest, people who do trips like this, we get to see a part of the world that almost nobody else gets to see or visit. And we get to see it in a really intimate way where we can connect with it, whereas other people going on a cruise ship or flying, they don't get that experience at the same human level. And I think that's what I love about it.
Well, I'm bound to ask you now, because the Volvo Ocean Race sets off on the next edition in just a few months' time, and we're following Dee Kafari and all the other girls that will be taking part in that race.
And they're an amazing boat for the environment.
Exactly. And so with all of that that's taking place, and presumably you'll have missed the opportunity to go this time, but is that on your bucket list?
Yeah, look, my ultimate bucket list is doing a Vendée. Volvo would be such an amazing trip to do, and to do it with such esteemed high-class sailors would be just incredible. I am planning on racing my yacht in the next Sydney to Hobart. I haven't formally entered yet because I haven't had a chance, but I will be entering the boat in that race, and I want to run an all-female crew in the Sydney to Hobart. So hopefully things, Gender Project, and, other sailors out and around the world, we can continue to inspire women to sailing and offer opportunities, for emerging sailors to get out and do campaigns similar to mine.
Oh, that's fantastic. We love to hear that, Lisa. Okay, what else is on your bucket list then? The Vendée, the Sydney to Hobart, which will be, your third time, the Volvo. Anything else we should know about that you've got on your to-do list?
Oh, there's a few. The first woman non-stop around Australia. I'm looking at circumnavigating the Arctic, looking at rowing a rowboat across an ocean and potentially around the world if I like it. So there's certainly a long, long list of events and trips that I'd really love to do. Certainly my experiences with this circumnavigation have not put a damper on my enthusiasm to do these trips in any way whatsoever. If anything, it's just given me more confidence in my ability to succeed with these journeys, and now I just want to keep going with it.
You had behind you a fantastic team of sponsors and support for this. Do you want to give a shout out to all these people that obviously meant so much to you to be able to do that trip?
Yeah, look, especially when I demastered, my sponsors really dug their heels and stood up and helped me out again. And with people like Arcus Wire and Rigging and Zyke, all my clothing was from Zyke, and we did so much research before I left and trial and error, and they designed new clothing for me specifically for the journey. And just to get that level of support from so many amazing companies like Richard Pacific and Harkin, Lancel and Lines with my yacht. There's too many to name actually, but one of the biggest is B&G as well. They came on board, and when I lost all my electronics up the mast, they gave them back to me again in Cape Town, and it's kind of humbling. I actually have over 35 different partners now who have stepped up and supported me in all different fields, not only sailing, and especially the environmental sector and the solar renewable energy, so Silent Wind and Solbian for the environmental charging systems for the boat, and to just have that support, and those people who, most of them had never met me before, saw the spark and the energy and were willing to invest, their marketing budget for the next 12 months and themselves and their equipment to my campaign and to my cause of climate action now. It's so humbling, and it's fantastic to see that there is that level of support support out there for sailors like myself.
We have to mention your family, who must have been worried every day you were out at sea. Why don't you give all them a shout out? Who are they?
Yeah, so my mum, my dad, and my sister, they and my grandpa and my auntie all flew over to Albany to see me, and which is awesome. And Mum's still here; she's my biggest fan, I reckon. You know, they're actually pretty used to me doing a bunch of harebrained crazy stuff, so they weren't too bad. Mum would get really worried if she would text me and then and I wouldn't respond. And as soon as she'd speak to me, she was fine again. And I think my shore team really managed my family quite well through the demasking, because they actually thought there was nothing really that bad happening. the blog of the demasking. But yeah, look, I mean, you can't do a trip like this alone. And I don't think, whilst I'm the sailor on the boat, this is a community trip that occurred, and it sort of became more than just me, especially being able to carry that banner of the Climate Action Now message and being able to sail that message around Antarctica and with community notes all over the hull of the boat. It's so humbling to see not just my family support me or my sponsors support me, but complete strangers step up and were donating money when I demasted to help me get back to the start line. And you know, we got over, I think it was 300 donations come in over that couple of weeks. And that's just people who've been following my blogs, and, you know, they're the average Joe Blow giving me their hard-earned money. And I think that that's just so special to see that community in sailing and for these sorts of trips. And not all of them were sailors. A lot of them were just people who came across the journey and wanted to join in and follow. So, you know, I just think it's really special, and it becomes everybody else's trip, and I end up being the sailor on the boat, which I love, and that's a big part of why I do what I do.
That's fantastic. Now it's launched you into public speaking tour now, and you're in much demand. Do you mind that side of things? Do you feel that's part of the obligation to your sponsors to fulfill these media requests and public speaking engagements?
No, I actually love it, because for me a big part of doing this is inspiring people to go out and live your life to the fullest. Whatever your goal is, whatever your challenge is, just go out and do it. And so by going and giving talks in community clubs, or like I'm at the Sydney International Boat Show next week or this week, those sorts of things, I do get that chance to really connect with people and inspire them and share that journey. And you know, if I have an impact on their life for the positive, it's worth every second.
The very best of luck with all the next endeavours, and we will follow you now, so we'll keep up with you, okay? And we'll catch up with you again down the track maybe and have you back on the show.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. No, it'll be fantastic.
You can find links to Lisa's social media in our show notes accompanying this episode. And you'll find many more conversations from the world of sailing on our website at wispsports.com, including podcast, videos and articles. You can follow us on social media at Wisp Sports, and you can also leave your comments on our website at wispsports.com on the Contact Us page. And you can subscribe to these podcasts on iTunes, so they can be downloaded then to any podcast app. Do join us again right here on The Sailing Show for more coverage of women sailing. Goodbye for now.